On today's edition of the show, we are going to discuss how Thursday night's game against the Carolina Hurricanes could be one of possibly 8 straight against the Canes. Talk about the scenarios going into Thursday night's game, and also talk about a few Panthers prospects who have signed with the Cats.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, April 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also follow the new Instagram page, also at LO_FLA Panthers. Follow us, the podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts, and our YouTube channel. And man, has the YouTube channel exploded over the last not only few weeks, but the last 24 hours since the Florida Panthers have clinched their spot in the postseason. I want to give a shout out to everybody who got to listen to yesterday's show, both on the YouTube and audio. As man, the numbers for that show was just incredible. And of course, it has to do a lot with the result of the Florida Panthers making the postseason. But I want to thank you guys for coming to this platform to take a listen to this show. So make sure to subscribe if you aren't already, because the content's not stopping here. That's for sure, because we'll get at least 4 more games for the Florida Panthers. But usually on Thursdays, we don't have a designated Thursday guest here on the show. So it was a great opportunity for me to get a little creative and invite back a guest who, it's been a little while since he's been back on the show. He is a media voice heard all around the South Florida media, and chances are he's probably insulted your mother in the past on Twitter. He is senior producer of the Dan LeBatard Show with Stugotz, and from Meadowlark Media, Roy Bellamy. Roy, welcome back to Locked On Panthers.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if I insulted your mother on Twitter, just to let you know, I'm only as nice as you allow me to be. If you're a jerk, then I can't be nice. I mean, that just makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, come on, give me a break here.
Simple as that. When it comes to just be nice. It takes $0 to be nice. Question for you, Roy.
Yes, sir.
Did you know that at Markham Park in Sunrise, Florida, there is a bike trail called Yo Mama?
I did not know that. That is news to me. That's brand new. And if I had a bike, I would ride that trail. That'd be a nice little exercise for me. But yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, I when I went biking there one time, I saw that, and I just thought about. I said Roy Bellamy approved here.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, stamp of approval by me. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But let's get into the hockey talk. Let's do that hockey So we're recording this just 15-20 minutes after the New York Islanders and Montreal Canadiens game went final. The New York Islanders did end up winning in regulation by a final score of 4-2 at UBS Arena on Long Island. And now the scenario is very simple for the Cats. It's win of any kind on Thursday. It could be in regulation, it could be in overtime, or it could be a shootout. You know that if you get a win, you will clinch wild card 1 and avoid the Boston Bruins. But with a loss of any kind, even if it's overtime loss, the New York Islanders will own the second tiebreaker. They'll be tied in regulation wins, but the New York Islanders will edge the Florida Panthers in regulation overtime wins, 41-40 in favor of the New York Islanders. So a lot is at stake for the Florida Panthers on Thursday night against the Carolina Hurricanes. But also, I want to get not only your thoughts on the scenarios, but just your overall feelings on the Panthers making it back after what it looked to be in doubt for the first 3 to 4 months of the season.
Well, I thought it was over after the Ottawa loss.
Same.
I legit thought it was over. And then Brooks Koepka. Yes, Brooks Koepka. And that was actually during the Rangers loss, actually.
Correct.
When he came in with that collapsible cone to chirp at Aaron Ekblad. That's what turned this season around. Aaron Ekblad had gone on a point streak. Alex Lyon, since the Ottawa loss, has won 6 straight. The Panthers have gone 6-1-1. And now we are in a situation where we are going to play some extra hockey in April, May, and hopefully June.
Yeah, and you also think about Keith Tkachuk calling out the Panthers on the radio, Paul Maurice's rant on the bench against the Toronto Maple Leafs on the road as well. And of course, language that I can't say on this show about, but we can read lips about what Paul Maurice said. But that those different factors of what happened in the Panthers season. I mean, you think about the Panthers since the trade deadline, they are 12-4-2 since the trade deadline. And both of them, it's kind of like the record is kind of like a sandwich, Roy. There's 6-0-1 on one side, 6-0-1 on the other, and then right in the middle where all the tomatoes, lettuce, mustard, you name it, whatever your sandwich of choice is. I mean, I guess because I'm heading down to South Florida tomorrow, I guess there will be a good opportunity to go to Las Patas right before the game. So, but in between that was that 4-game losing streak. So the trends coming out of the trade deadline, and then Bill Zito, of course, standing pat, knowing when to make a move and not to make a move too. We've seen both sides of that too, and just you're up here, then down, then back up, and this team played with a lot of our emotions, Roy.
Yeah, I was worried when Bill Zito decided not to make a move. It's at the time, I was thinking about, okay, our second D-line pairing is not exactly working out right now. Maybe we should get a defenseman, but they didn't have cap room, so there was that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, got no choice. We're gonna play with what we have, and it worked out, luckily for us. And I'm really surprised. I honestly, yesterday going into the day, because I didn't know the clinching scenarios, the NHL didn't provide that until noon. So I'm over here thinking that, okay, the Panthers had to go 1-0-1. They got the overtime loss. Okay, must win Thursday. And then that tweet happens, and it's like, okay, Sabres have to lose. The Devils have to win, and the Penguins have to lose to the worst team in the sport this season. Meh. And then, the empty net goal scored by the Blackhawks, and I was like, okay, we just made the playoffs because the Penguins lost to the worst team in the National Hockey League. Wow. Wow. Everything came together last night. So, yeah, I'm shocked in a very good way and very happy about what happened. And no Sidney Crosby.
You are getting raw reaction out of Roy Bellamy, out of and his true feelings on Sidney Crosby not being in the dance. It's first time in 16 years that we haven't seen Sidney Crosby in the postseason, and no Alexander Ovechkin since 2014. So for the first time, we don't see either of them in the dance.
Suck on that. How about that, huh?
I mean,
I'm a credential media member.
He promises.
Professional.
I can confirm. Being able to sit next to him at times when I do travel down for games. But hey, with the cap room and of course the lack of space, of course with Patric Hornqvist's LTIR space, it's really helped the Panthers and a lot of the moves that they were able to make in the season as well.
And that's the other thing. Will they Will they call him up? Will he play? And where is he going to play? um, is he going to replace Eric Stahl, or what's going to happen there?
Mhm.
So, I mean, you're basically switching out veteran leadership in the playoffs with veteran leadership in the playoffs, but he hasn't played in a while, so there's you got a little bit of wrinkle rust there. So you never know. I don't know what Maurice is going to do in this situation, but those are questions. Those are good problems to have.
Absolutely. Good problems to have. And we're actually going to carry over that Patric Hornqvist conversation in the second segment of this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We're going to discuss that next on the show. But first, we are going to tell you all about Built Bar. And looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. Built. You got to try this. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covering 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. And I know you don't need to wait for a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at built.com, and now you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club so you can get your specialty flavors still at built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today and walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, and coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro puffs. You can thank me later. Segment number 2 here on this Thursday, April 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I have Roy Bellamy, senior producer from the Dan LeBatard show with Stugotz, part of the Meadowlark Media as well. And a few going back to the Patric Hornqvist conversation, he has been nominated by the South Florida chapter of the PHWA for the Bill Masterson Award about someone who's dealt with perseverance in the sport of hockey. And of course, we knew the injury situation for Patric Hornqvist. His last game was December 3rd against the Seattle Kraken on the road. And because Patric Hornqvist is a winger, I assume that if he were to come in, he would and assuming that Sam Bennett would come back for the postseason, that would have Eric Stahl down on the fourth line, and because Patric Hornqvist plays on the right, I would assume that he would sub in for Giovanni Smith if that's the case, because of course salary cap doesn't apply in the postseason, so there's that chance as well. But another nomination is Kara Ota-O'Brien, founder of the Lucky Pucks Hockey Club and the president of the Florida Women's Hockey League that grew to 14 teams and now 350 participants. Our friend Aaron Brown has been promoting where fans can vote. We, the fans, can vote for Karen Ota-O'Brien for the Willie O'Ree Award. So we will post this in the show notes as far as where to vote for Karen Ota-O'Brien. And I got a chance to watch Aaron Brown play a hockey game against that Lucky Pucks hockey club during All-Star Weekend. So it was a treat watching that game when I did go down. So we'll post that in the show notes. And going back to the whole cap situation, Roy, with Patric Hornqvist, of course, that helped with bringing Anthony Duclair back, but also it gave the opportunity for the Florida Panthers to sign 4th-round pick defenseman Mike Benning out of the University of Denver. He's a power play specialist, a rock of a one-timer. He's a great two-way defenseman, and signed a 3 ELC with an AAV of $916K, and it's gonna help burn the first year because he's already on the roster. But he was already in the Panthers locker room even before it was formally announced. So now the Panthers, their cap space is now at $145K. So they are tight as that can be again on the cap. But with the New York Islanders winning, I'm really not sure if Paul Maurice is gonna have them play a game 82 in there, unless Paul Maurice is more worried about health going into the postseason. What are your thoughts on what could possibly happen? Could we see Mike Benning on Thursday night?
I'm hoping that I can see him as a black ace. Maybe they can have him in there for the playoffs. But I'm excited because now the growing in the defensive space now, especially. I mean, as I said, I've been very critical about the second D line pair, especially Mark Stahl. But Mark Stahl lately, well, at least the past couple of games has been playing a lot better defensively and I wouldn't say hasn't been too cement footed. I mean, he is still skating on cement skates, but it is what it is. But I'm excited seeing Benning uh, get his due. I'm glad they got to see the big club and get into the locker room and see what it's like in practice in the NHL. So hopefully this works out for him. Hopefully we'll see him in the playoffs as a Black Ace.
Yeah. There is a big opportunity that he could be a black ace for the Florida Panthers. Also, another signing, because we didn't mention this on yesterday's show, because we were just celebrating the fact that the Florida Panthers were making it to the postseason, so we didn't even get to touch on this. Mackie Samoskevich, 2021 first round pick out of the University of Michigan. Signed a PTO with the Charlotte Checkers. He hasn't signed his ELC yet, but the writing is on the wall that his ELC will start next year. But this PTO, he's going to make his debut for the Charlotte Checkers on Friday, which the Charlotte Checkers have 2 games left. They're going to be playing Lehigh Valley and Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And last time I checked, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms were down to the Bridgeport Islanders 5-3. Got to double check on that score. They do have a game in hand on the Charlotte Checkers. So there is also a chance that and a control of their destiny that we could see the Charlotte Checkers finish 3rd in the Atlantic and possibly face the Hartford Wolfpack in round 1 of the postseason. But Mackie Samoskevich, Roy, the jump that he had, and last year's Michigan team was way more stacked than this year's. Of course, this year's Michigan team had Adam Fantilli in the mix. Last year's had Owen Power of the who's now with the Buffalo Sabres, Kent Johnson, who's now with the Columbus Blue Jackets. But look at the jump that Mackie Samoskevich got from year as a freshman to sophomore. 10 goals to 20. 19 assists to 23. A 4 assist jump. But in this season, he's averaging over a point per game, 43 points in 39 games. Second team Big Ten for him and the University of Michigan. And of course they got bounced in the Frozen Four, but a big opportunity for Mackie Samoskevich to be part of a playoff run for Charlotte. But also, we don't have to face that question. Same thing with Mike Benning. We don't have to face that question of prospects and the question of, are they going to sign? Are they not going to sign? And I'm not expecting Mackie to start with the Panthers next year because he's 20 years old. He's just starting off. But this is a good sign of things to come for Mackie and company.
Well, first of all, congratulations to Quinnipiac. Unfortunately, I'm going to hear about this ad nauseum from Justin Cohen at the Panthers game, so that's going to suck for me. But yeah, good for Mackie. I'm hoping that he does well in the playoffs with Charlotte, and I believe they're going to go. I believe they're going to go a long way in the playoffs. So yeah, good for Mackie. I'm happy. That jump they had is. Yeah, it's remarkable, and I think we may see him next season in the big club. I think maybe later in the season, who knows? But yeah, I think we're going to see him. He's going to get a little taste of the action up here. Hopefully, it's not going to be because of injury, but I think he's going to see some ice time with the Panthers next year. So, Mackie, good for you, brother. Hopefully, we get to see you up here.
Yeah, and you also got to think about what the Panthers did this season and the lack of up and down moves with prospects because of cap space.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped with that. It helped Lucas Carlson this year get more games down, and he all-time points for defensemen in Charlotte Checkers history, spending more of that time down there. And that's going to really help him develop develop his game more, so that when he does come to the big club, that's really gonna hopefully help him get to that next level. So maybe it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise as far as the cap and some of the players staying down there for a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It just means more seasonings, and that's what you need. You need a little bit more playing time down there, so they can get used to a little bit faster action than what they would in college or in a junior league.
No doubt. And so so maybe that's definitely a blessing in disguise for someone like, especially like a Lucas Carlson. And hey, with last time I checked, it was like 10 million in cap space, depending on if the cap is going to be 83.5. Of course, we won't know until a few months from now. So it'll be easier to bring guys up and down who are currently on their ELCs starting next year. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to talk more about the game on Thursday night and who starts in goal, who and the situation of what could happen if the Panthers do win, and if their opponents from Thursday's game and another game from the out of town scoreboard has a certain result. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Game Time. And buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets to all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. You could use Game Time to even get last-minute tickets on the Heat play-in game on Friday night against the Chicago Bulls. Or you can use it on the upcoming 3-game series for the Miami Marlins against the Arizona Diamondbacks, where the Miami Marlins just had a comeback win on the road today against the Philadelphia Phillies. Or you could use it for upcoming Panthers playoff game, because we are guaranteed a games 3 and a game 4. So forget planning months ahead. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals for tickets for football, basketball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll have always the best price. So if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, April 13th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I got senior producer from the Dan LeBatard Show with Stugotz, from Meadowlark Media, Roy Bellamy, and also another podcast that I want to plug that is part of the LeBatard and Friends network is Too Many Men with Sarah Sivian, Allison Buchan, and Shayna Goldman. Part of that network as well. Great podcast that the 3 ladies do over there. Of course, I got a chance to meet Sarah Sivian during All-Star Weekend. Great human being as well. But Roy,
yeah,
we already know Sam Bennett's not playing tomorrow for the Panthers. So there was questions once the Panthers did clinch. Now that their backs aren't so much against the wall about making the dance, who they start in goal is a little bit more tricky. Paul Maurice, of course, was not going to tip his hand, and of course, the person who asked the question when it came to the goaltending was our friend David Dork of the Hockey News / Local 10, and he said he had 2 mindsets going into Thursday's game, and of course, it's different now with the Montreal Canadiens losing to the New York Islanders. But I must ask you, who do you think starts Thursday? Not only Thursday, but who do you think starts game 1 for the Panthers?
Well, I think whoever starts Thursday is going to start game 1. That's one. The other thing is, personally, I would rather go with the hot hand until that hand starts cooling off. But listen, I'm not Paul Maurice. I'm not the coach. But personally, I would go with Alex Lyon, even though He's coming off of an overtime loss, a close overtime loss, where he did stand on his head.
Yes.
Of course, both goaltenders in that game stood on their heads. Took a fluky bounce for that puck to get past him in regulation. So, yeah, I would go back to Alex Lyon. I don't know if Bob is fully recovered from his illness, but if if you want to get the rust off of him, you would play him on Thursday. But again, I believe whoever plays on Thursday is going to start game one. So if it was me, I would go with Alex Lyon.
There's a few ways of thinking of it. Of course, rust when it comes to Sergei Bobrovsky, and at least getting a game in. But then when you think about who starts game one, I think of it like this. If you start Sergei Bobrovsky in game one and starts off poorly, you can go to Alex Lyon, and if he plays poorly, you go back to the $10 million man. But if you start Alex Lyon in game one, plays poorly, and you bring in Sergei Bobrovsky, you're likely not going back to Alex Lyon in that situation because of trust from the organization, first of all. And second, of course, there's a little bit of egos in play as well when it comes to wanting to prove that the $10 million man is worth that contract too when it comes to it. So there's a few ways of thinking. So again, if Bob starts the series and go back to Lyon, you could always go back to Bob. But if it's the other way around, I don't think you're switching it at that point. You're going to finish with Bobrovsky there. So there's a few ways of thinking of it too. But at the same time, with Alex Lyon going into the game on Thursday night, he is the hot hand. We can't deny that. And even in the loss, he looked great. So he hasn't lost the job. That's the thing. He hasn't lost the job for the Panthers neither. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for Paul Maurice to make that decision and say, oh, we're just going to start Bob, has a great game. Okay, Alex Lyon, you're going to sit the rest of the way. I don't know how you can do that if you're Paul Maurice.
Yeah, that's a tough decision that I'm so happy that I don't have. But again, it's a good problem to have. It's a very good problem to have. So at least he gets to make that decision. But you mentioned trust, though. I don't think it's more. I think it's more about contract than it is trust at this point. I mean, they're paying this man a lot of money. So trust is out the window. He's going to have to play up to that contract until the contract is done or they can ship it off.
No doubt. And regardless of what happens with Alex Lyon the rest of the way, I think he's going to earn a contract from someone else because Bobrovsky still has that no move clause that doesn't become a modified no trade clause until July 1, 2024. So you're stuck with Bob for next season. You already gave Spencer Knight a contract extension. Of course, we still hope that everything that's going on with Spencer Knight, that he is okay, and hopefully that he comes back a lot stronger. So it's likely going to be one more year of that tandem. And whatever happens with Alex Lyon, it's going to be a great story for him. And it's kind of in relation to Andrew Hammond when he was with the Ottawa Senators, the Hamburglar, when he got the Ottawa Senators to the postseason as well. So wanted to comment a little bit about the future of Alex Lyon. I think this is going to be his last season with the Panthers either way. But let's also discuss the scenarios, not only we already discussed the scenarios for if the Florida Panthers win or lose, but also the scenarios of who their opponent could be if it so happens. Of course, if they lose, they're going to be wild card one. They play Boston. But here's where it gets a little difficult on the other side of who they will face, because the Carolina Hurricanes have something to play for. The New Jersey Devils have also something to play for as well. The Carolina Hurricanes are 1 point ahead of the New Jersey Devils, but they do not own the tiebreaker. The Carolina Hurricanes would need to win outright. Their last game against Detroit, they were not resting their players. So you're going to see as likely a high intensity game and no coasting from either of the two teams, because they are playing for positioning. Yeah, it could be the first of 8 straight for these two teams. There's still that possibility, even if the Florida Panthers do in fact win. That depends if the New Jersey Devils lose to Washington. But let's go over if the Florida Panthers defeat the Carolina Hurricanes in regulation or overtime, and the New Jersey Devils win, the Panthers will play the Devils no matter what. If the Devils beat the Capitals and the Panthers beat the Carolina Hurricanes in any fashion.
Mm-hmm.
If the Florida Panthers win in overtime and the New Jersey Devils lose in any fashion, then it'll be Florida versus Carolina. So again, the Carolina Hurricanes would have to beat them outright there. So that's the scenario as far as who their opponent could be. And the Florida Panthers won the season series against the New Jersey Devils. They're tied right now with the Carolina Hurricanes, and they tied the season series against Boston. So they've proven that each of these matchups, even though they got shut out by Carolina towards the end of 2022, I think they're going to present a challenge to either of these three teams.
Well, I got to tell you, I was looking past the Maple Leafs game to Thursday's game. Like I wasn't even worried about them winning or losing against the Maple Leafs. Obviously I was worried about that, but yeah, I was worried because I knew coming in that Carolina was going to have something to play for, and I knew going into the Maple Leafs game that they were not playing for anything. They already had their,
which is weird.
I mean, they had the matchup set up already. They got locations and everything. They don't have to worry about where they have to go. They know where they were going. So I wasn't worried about that. I was hoping the Panthers would win, but that didn't happen. But at least they got the point. So, but yeah, I was dreading going into Thursday without even thinking about what was going to happen in the Maple Leafs game. But since we're in, I say, you know what? I don't care who the opponent is. Bring it on. Bring all of them on. Bring Boston on. Bring Carolina on. Bring New Jersey on. I do not care. We are in the playoffs. But looking into this now, New Jersey's had one of the more surprising seasons that any team has had in a long time. I don't know how much they can sustain that going into the postseason.
Fifth youngest team in the NHL.
Yeah, not a lot of experience. So the Panthers have plenty of experience on their club. Carolina, they've fallen off a little bit. They're not as heavy of a opponent as they have been in the past. So, but again, if the Panthers do lose this game, you got the greatest regular season team in NHL history. But I mean, it's still a matchup problem for that team. So, I think the Panthers, like at the beginning of the season, we were saying that, okay, Paul Maurice is going to have them playing a more playoff style of hockey. They're going to be more defensive. And I said, hey, it only took them 77 games for that to happen, but they've got it finally going. Mm-hmm. So I think any of the three matchups is going to be a problem for any of those three teams. So I got my money on the Panthers here in the first round.
Oh, hot take from Roy to definitely end the show. So, and when you tell the players or ask the players who they rather face, they're likely going to say the same thing. It's like, we're going to be ready. We're going to lace up our skates, and we're going to get out there and put in our best effort no matter what. So they're obviously going to say the same thing as far as that. So this team is going to be ready, but of course there's one game to take care of right before we do get to the postseason, and we'll know it'll be more clear once 9:30 or 10 o'clock hits on Thursday night about what's going to happen with the Florida Panthers and their matchup. But Roy, I want to thank you so much once again for joining me on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
All right, I am at Roy Belly, RoyBelly on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is basically just a platform for me to share photos of my daughter, Claire. So there's that. You can also find me on the Dan LeBatard Show with Stugotz, Because Miami and Montgomery and Company on the LeBatard and Friends Network. Meadowlark Media.
Awesome, Roy. Thank you so much. And I will see you in person tomorrow.
I will see you at FLA Live Arena.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen of the day. Game to game NHL. Every score, every moment, every top performance. Locked On game to game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Roy Bellamy, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.